All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the SLN Sports Report. I'm back. It's been about a month, I think. I've been in a soccer depression because Benfica actually suck, but now they're bringing it back, so I haven't been on the show. But today I'm with Seth and Nick. How we doing, boys?
We vibing.
I'm all right.
All right, so we're going to round out the Premier League. We're going to do all that. We're going to talk some Serie A. And since I'm back, we got to talk Portugal because that's just the rule. I'm the leader of this show. We get to
Put
talk
down.
Because we got some big stuff in Portugal that's going to make me really happy tomorrow. So let's start off with the Premier League here first. All right, I'm going to go through all the scores for you guys, all right? So Arsenal defeated Watford 3-2. Wow. Congratulations, Arsenal. Burnley loses to Brighton 2-1. Chelsea defeats Wolves 2-0. Good job, Wolves. Crystal Palace and Tottenham drew 1-1. Okay, Tottenham. Bournemouth defeat Everton 3-1. Goodbye, Bournemouth. Everton, what are you doing? Manchester United pull out the victory against Leicester City 2-0. Man City absolutely demolished Norwich 5-0. Goodbye, Norwich. We'll see you next year. Or 2 years, I'm sorry. Newcastle lose to Liverpool 3-1. What a surprise. To cap off a fantastic year, Sheffield United lose to Southampton 3-1. And West Ham and Aston Villa drew 1-1. Wow, Aston Villa. What do you got, Seth, for this?
Well, I think the most interesting results were definitely in the relegation battle. You had the Bournemouth game where Bournemouth win. They score 3 goals for the first time in forever and still get relegated. It was far too little too late. Solanke finally scores. King finally scores again, and yet they still go down. The previous result against Southampton that they got was really pivotal in this last day. Bournemouth poured on the pressure for basically 90 minutes, and Southampton managed to score 2 goals on them, and that pretty much damned them. They had a 5% chance of staying up. The only way they could have stayed up was if Watford lost and Aston Villa lost. And since Villa went 1-0 up momentarily, they were for sure relegated, and then West Ham scored. So then all the Bournemouth fans, I'm sure, were hoping that West Ham would score again. And the honorary West Ham fan for the day, Nick, was very excited when West Ham made it 1-1 because it could have meant that Aston Villa would go down instead of Bournemouth. But in fairly unlucky fashion, Bournemouth go down after winning their last game against a team that everyone would have expected to beat them. But Bournemouth, they shot themselves in the foot at several times during the season. They have blown leads. They've lost games where they've dominated, such as the one against Southampton. And they had a lot of strange injuries that probably lasted longer than they should have. They rushed people back and re-injured people. So that's what happens when you rely on basically 2 people to get all your goals and they don't score much for you in Callum Wilson and Josh King. And Solanke, who was a $31 million purchase, ends up scoring you under 5 goals across 1.5 or 2 seasons, I believe. And that's just not good enough. He could be a situation like Tammy where he goes to the championship and looks really good, but I don't know. They're going to have to keep him though, because they're not going to be able to get any return on that fee, and they need him to come good. Whereas they have some other sellable assets that I don't think will be as hard to move on as Solanke, because nobody wants to take a risk on him now. I mean, $30 million for a player was already stupid, and now that he hasn't delivered whatsoever, it's going to be really hard to move him on. So I do feel bad for Bournemouth in a way, but they've also been the architect of their own downfall at several points with their transfer policy and other things like that. So beating Everton is really just a blip in a really, really poor season for Eddie Howe. So let's see how they do in the championship next season, I guess.
They've been a feel-good story ever since they got up to the Premier League.
Lucky.
Absolutely dominated promotion. What do you got, Nick?
Well, I mean, yeah, I have to agree with Seth. I mean, like Bournemouth, I mean, they'll go down. And now they're, it's a question of who they sell and who stays. I think the interesting thing about this crop of teams that's gone down is a lot of them have a ton of very interesting sellable assets. But I think obviously, the biggest losers of the season overall have been Watford. I think they were unlucky at the start of the season with Javi Gracia. They were playing very good, decent football, and they just for whatever reason couldn't get it going. Sacked him, brought in Quique Sanchez Flores. Horrible decision. Sacked him, brought in Nigel Pearson. Nigel Pearson put the team on the right track. Obviously we're all gonna remember that Liverpool game, the end of the unbeaten run.
Thank God.
I don't think I ever celebrated more. Even as a United fan, that's pretty sad. But I think sacking Pearson with 2 games left to go was the poorest decision I think any team has made in this entire season. And that's saying a lot because there's been a lot of crappy decisions made.
I agree.
But getting rid of Pearson, that was a stupid move because you're literally rocking the boat just before you're in the scrap and you're gonna rock the boat like that. That is very dangerous. And so I think that was what set it you're going down and Villa's staying up. To me, I think that the Pozzo family really screwed their own club. Now, do I think they'll be able to come back up in a couple of seasons? Yeah, I think that they've got the resources to. But I think players there's going to be an exodus because they've got some good players there. Deulofeu, Decore, Sarr. I think they'll. A lot of them will probably turn up at Udinese because that's what the Pozzo do. They'll probably just ship them between their 2 clubs. But I just think there's money that can be made from them. They can probably get back up. But they were just unlucky against Arsenal. XG had it at 3.92 to 1.95 in Watford's favor. That is ridiculous. The fact they only scored 2 goals, but
man,
it would be like that sometime.
It do be like that.
So I gotta say, Watford, they dropped the ball. Villa are extremely lucky to stay up. They're only up because of some broken cameras and goal line technology and some
absolutely.
really crappy management from Watford. But that's the relegation. That's just it's sad to see.
Probably one of the more entertaining relegation battles we've had in the past few years.
Definitely.
Yeah, there were 21 different possibilities that could happen, I guess, on the last
final day.
Yeah, and the thing that was really surprising to me about Nigel Pearson getting sacked is I thought he would be the perfect person to keep them steady in the championship, regardless of who leaves, because he was the guy who brought Leicester up from the championship. So, we've already seen that he can promote a team, and he might have done it at one other point in his career. I'm not sure, but he's just someone that I think has, other than the famous ostrich comments back in the day, I think he's usually a pretty level-headed guy. And in a team that's had the most turbulent managerial situation I've ever seen in soccer, ever, I thought he was kind of a savvy appointment by Watford. And then 2 games left, they let him go. And someone who I think is probably among the crop that are going to still be in there next season, he'd probably be the best manager in the championship. And they let him go. And they have a squad that has, yes, many veterans who they're probably going to have to sell on because they won't want to play in the championship. But they also have quite a few players on loan who are younger and can come back and, I would imagine, do pretty well in the championship. They have a guy who's playing in La Liga right now.
This is Stupinian, the left back.
Yeah, Stupinian, and
so
he's playing at a top 5 league level, and left back is one of the problem positions they had this year. So I think it's really, really silly that they fired him. But I do feel so bad for that team because other than Bournemouth, like Rob was saying, Bournemouth have kind of been a feel-good story since they've come up. I really liked Watford since they came up because they would get results against the big teams. They would give people good games, but it was always the managerial situation that screwed over some really, really talented players that are in that squad. I mean, I don't think Ismail Assar expected to go from Ligue 1 to the championship in 13 months. Like, that's pretty bad. And, you know, a player like Abdoulaye Doucouré has taken the Premier League by storm, playing in several positions. Some team is going to pick him up. He's not going to play in the championship. Like, he's far too high quality for the championship. And same goes with Deulofeu. And
at a team like Everton or something like that.
Exactly.
He's
exactly.
a very, very
So
good defender. You know?
I feel bad, especially for Watford fans, because I'm sure this last couple year period was really nice for them to see players of such a high quality end up at their club, only to get relegated because of pretty bad ownership moves. And it's frustrating, I'm sure.
Well, you remember how Watford came up to the Premier League. They had that probably like, if Aguero's goal didn't happen, probably the greatest moment in English soccer. Troy Deeney scoring that last-minute goal after the penalty.
I feel bad for Deeney too. I feel bad for Deeney.
But I think he's staying with the club.
I think he's staying. Yeah.
He's played the championship with them before. He doesn't. I don't think he really. Like, is he really a Premier League striker, or is he more of a championship striker?
In sort of a late '90s way, he is.
Yeah. He bodies players, and I mean, he's got a pretty good record. I mean, he does score a lot of penalties, but the fact of the matter is, like, he's 32 years old. I think he's not going to be moving on. I don't think any club is going to want to buy him. But
he's Watford through and through.
Yeah,
I think he's been there since like
20. I think it's 2010.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a decade. He's been in there for a decade. I think he should stay there the whole rest of his career. He's got it. But I do want to talk a little bit about Aston Villa. Because I don't know how they did it, but they did it. They did it.
Nick doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah. And the rumors are that they might be getting Benfica's former manager, Bruno Lage. That's the talks right now. And if they do get him, I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know. If you're a Villa fan, I don't know how you can feel about it. Because Bruno Lage left Benfica.
Better than Dean Smith.
Really bad.
That's not saying a lot.
He left Benfica on very bad terms. And the reason why he left on bad terms is because the players didn't try hard enough. We found that. I found that out the hard way. So I do think he's a good manager. But is he ready for Premier League? I'm not sure.
You know, it's a step up from it. It genuinely is a step up from Dean Smith. Is it a big step up? No, it's hard to say. You know, he got a lot out of a lot of players at Benfica. Like, I mean, like, I don't think Adel Taarabt ever would have been a viable player ever again.
Absolutely, I understand that. Before the thing with Abdel Taarabt, right, is when he first came to Benfica, it was a couple years ago. He had so much promise, and then he got fat, and then he didn't care. And literally, the only highlight for 3 years from Abdel Taarabt, like, I kid you not, the only highlight we had of him was he took a corner and he put it behind the net. That was the only highlight.
That's all you need.
and then Bruno Lage came to coach Benfica B. And then, like, all of a sudden, Tarap's doing good, right? And then you're like, he trusted in Taarabt, and Taarabt trusted Lage. And then all this stuff happened with the main team, with Rui Vitoria, and it soon happened with Bruno Lage, is that, like, the players decide not to care, and then a new manager comes in, they start caring, and then they care again, and then whenever all this happens. But that's a different conversation for a different day that maybe I ripped my hair off for, but we don't know anymore. But yeah, then he came up, and then Taarabt got the chance to play in the main league, and he played fantastic. He's Benfica's probably Benfica's best player of the year. I don't care what people say. I don't care about how many goals Pizzi scored. Abdel Taarabt did pretty damn good. But staying with Bruno Lage here, I think he could do good. I mean, towards the end of his stint at Benfica, his tactics kind of weren't making sense. I don't know why. He decided, like, week after week, for some reason, he'd throw in 3 strikers, try and get a goal. And I never.
Well, that was a trend of Aston Villa's season. Just throw as many attacking midfielders on the field at one time as possible and see if you can win a game.
Yeah, so, I mean,
Definitely.
with Bruno Lage, they could be something special at the beginning. But I don't know how they can do later on because it looks like Bruno Lage has the stuff to make an impact when he first comes. And then he can't adapt after the fact. So we'll see. I think we'll be seeing Aston Villa do decent to start.
Maybe getting those first few points are what matters. But I think the question mark for Aston Villa is the Jack Grealish situation. If he stays, I think it's a very different proposition. If he goes, Aston Villa probably need a big rebuild. I mean, Seth, I think you probably rate Grealish more than I do.
I think Grealish is so overrated. Like, I don't understand why people think he's so good.
Here's the thing. I don't think it's helpful when a player like Grealish plays every single game in the season. I think he had 36 games out of 38. But I don't think it's helpful that he's moved constantly between playing in a front three on the left and then playing as an attacking midfielder in a midfield three. I don't think it's a good idea to keep doing that with a player who is the most fouled in the Premier League, a player who is pretty much the only creative outlet in your team. You're switching his position pretty much every other game and surrounding him with players who also want the ball at their feet but are way less talented. So there's all these other players who want the ball, like Conor Hurhan and Anwar El Ghazi, and these guys are not as good creatively as Grealish. So what does Dean Smith do? He moves him into the front three. He wants him to play as an attacking player. But Grealish has never been like this elite goal scorer. That's just not what he is. And Aston Villa didn't have a goal scorer. So a player who scores, I think, 7 Premier League goals ends up as your top scorer. Like, that's just not good enough. Like, that Aston Villa team makes no sense. They spent so much money for the team to make no sense. So in this next transfer window, if they keep Grealish, which I hope they do, because if he goes anywhere, I think he's going to go to United, and I just don't really want Grealish at United.
Terrible transfer, in my opinion.
It's such a bad transfer. If they can keep him, I think Aston Villa need to find a penalty box striker who is not a target man, because that's not what is going to get you goals linking up with Grealish. You need a penalty box striker who is quick and can play on the counter, because Aston Villa, when they held possession, did nothing and only scored goals in transition with Grealish or from set pieces. So it has to be a complete rebuild with or without Grealish. That front line needs to completely change.
Yeah.
The back line, I think, has a little bit of promise. There's a little bit of promise there. Like, I think Mings could get better. I think Konsa's okay. I think he could be better. Gilbert was awful. I don't know what happened with Gilbert, but I think he was really highly touted before the transfer, and I think he could still fulfill his potential. You have Douglas Luiz, who I think is an excellent midfielder. Like, Douglas Luiz, I think, is so overlooked. He was in a really bad midfield for almost all of the season. McGinn was injured so much. I think Douglas Luiz might be one of those players that they sell to generate money, because he is so good, and he could definitely step up. And he played, I think, every single game for Aston Villa and wasn't injury prone like John McGinn was. And I believe he's younger than John McGinn. So if they're going to keep Grealish, I think they have to sell some of these players, because spending upwards of 100 million euros last summer, that's just not okay. Like, you're going to get financial fair play on your ass.
That's a lot to
finish. I thought they were going to go down, honestly.
Exactly. I thought they were going to go down for that exact reason.
But
I could talk about them forever. I mean, it's like.
But I just want to move on.
Yeah, because I'm going to rant about Villa, and I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want. I understand that you don't like him. I know why you don't like him. I don't want to hear it.
We don't like Aston Villa here, and there's absolutely no reason for it. But we don't.
But I do want to just get the show moving here. I want to talk about the top. I want to talk about the top of the table here. Leicester City. Leicester City absolutely took a hot shit this season.
Drop the ball, definitely.
They shat the bed. They wet the bed, shat the bed. They took the whole thing, and they were so promised to finish top 3 at least, maybe even top 2 at one point, right? But then they just went like that. That's what happened. I don't know what happened to them.
I mean,
Injuries.
what I'll say is, yeah, it's injuries. You're right. Like, it's like when you run, they ran super hot at the start of the season. Like,
Hot.
Let's not let's make no bearings about that. I mean, they definitely
They were really hot. Then they played Man City, I believe, and then the hype kind of went down.
Well, the fact of the matter is, I think the team overall, and I think the way they played throughout the season was probably better than their title-winning season. I might take a pelter for that, but I'm gonna stick by that statement.
The squad quality is so much
see
higher.
that. Yeah, I definitely understand it though. Because like when you go back to the year they won the title, they played more counterattacking more than anything.
Yeah,
they were like this year they were trying to play like
pressing
a top 16.
lot higher up the pitch.
Yeah, they were trying to play like a top 16. That were in Arsenal.
And I think, they got killed when, first of all, Wilfred and Ndidi got injured. There's probably no one in the league who can out and out replace him right now. And certainly no one at Leicester. So that was the first problem. You lost that shield of the back four. Then James Maddison. James Maddison facilitates a lot in the attack. When he's in there, you can see a lot of the players just generally play better. His form dropped off a ton over the second half of the season as well. What I will say is that, looking back on the season, fifth place finish, 4 points outside the Champions League places, that sounds good on paper. It's just the fact that they dropped off so much and that the top 6 have been so poor this season that, this was an opportunity for them, for Leicester and for teams like Wolves. And I don't know. I mean, it's looking back on the entirety of the season, you actually have to question, are Leicester really that much better than a team like Wolves? It's difficult to say. But I think, they gotta improve the depth of the team. They got to keep Brendan Rodgers he has to stay out of transfers because he's terrible with transfers. I think the Ayotze Perez move was terrible. Aside from the hat trick against Southampton, he has not really been a success. But I think there's some promise there. Ricardo Pereira, in my opinion, probably the best, probably the most well-rounded right back in the league.
I would say he's easily the best two-way defender in the Premier League right now.
So there's promise there. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
They still, I think next season they build right. They could probably have a go again. I don't think it'll be as easy. Vardy's another year older. They really do need backup for Vardy, like a proper striker that can replace him. My number one shout all season was Victor Osimhen, but it seems like he's probably going to Napoli. There's some positives, but yeah, you're gonna look back on it and say, "Damn, they dropped the ball."
It gives Man U the 3rd place spot now. They're going to Champions League. Then they could aren't they still in Europa League?
Yeah,
so they are.
So they could still win that.
The way I see the final picture of the top 4 this season, the repercussions I think of that are that Leicester had such a large points gap on United. Yes, that's true. But in the winter, United brought in what ended up being their best player.
Yep.
And earned more points than any other team from when Bruno signed until the end of the season. If you look at Leicester City, they lost players in January, basically.
Yeah.
They had, from January on, they only lost important players, whereas United only gained important players. So in a different season where, Ndidi and Maddison don't get injured within the same month of each other, Leicester probably get the Champions League spot but
Yeah.
United would still have the Europa League. So I think this is probably the most unlucky Leicester could have possibly gotten, because they have no second chance. United have a second chance that they don't need anymore. Now United can approach the Europa League to win it with basically no pressure. They can win the Europa League, get a trophy, make the fans happy, but there's no pressure. There's absolutely no pressure.
Yeah.
Whereas there was immense pressure on Leicester. They said, oh, they're going to wrap up third. They're going to wrap up the Champions League in the next 2 games. And then what do? They lose important players and they lose games constantly. And you start to see the holes in the Leicester squad. Had a similar thing happen to Wolves, where their 2 most important players to building up play or protecting the defense get a serious injury, had it been Adama Traore with a serious injury or Jimenez with a serious injury, you would have seen a similar thing, because Wolves have basically no rotation.
No.
There's no depth. They play
stick.
Roman Saiz as a center back because they have to. There's no depth there.
Nuno sticks to that same lineup. We've seen
exactly.
I believe they've used the least number of players in the Premier League this season.
That would not surprise me at all. The only depth they have is Pedro Neto, and when you don't start Pedro Neto, you realize that front line, other than Adama Traore, really lacks any real dynamism. You can play Jota in on goal and he'll do something fantastic every 5 or so games, but that team lacks energy, and that's something that Leicester have. Leicester have energy in abundance. They have energy in their fullbacks. They have Maddison. They have Damari Gray off the bench. Harvey Barnes, who's probably what I would describe as sneaky fast. Doesn't really look fast, but is so quick and has a low back lift and all these things that make a player underrated. Exactly. Whereas I think this Wolves team is so consistently showing the same starting 11 that they might be reaching their peak. I don't see, unless they make signings, I don't see this Wolves team getting any better. I can see the Leicester team getting much better.
See, I would look forward to them signing some Portuguese players this transfer window.
They definitely will. They definitely
will. It would be the same every other transfer window, but it's much more now because Porto, they're losing about 10 players to transfer this coming window.
Yep.
So, I mean, you look at who's coaching Wolves, and you see that who he formerly coached was Port. They left on decent terms. Just it was more of an agreement that they didn't work with each other. So I mean, they could still very much work together right now. They'd be like, hey, Noon, you want because you will Port player, and then they give him a Port player. They'll probably give him a decent one, and then there it is. You got another Portuguese player on Wolves.
Well, it's the George Mendes connection, right? Because they've got, because it's his feeder club, that's where he dumps his players. So, I mean, there's going to be reinforcements for Wolves. It's a question of are they going to be Jimenez reliant next season? Because they were massively Jimenez reliant this season. And that's not, I'm not going to say that's a bad thing because Jimenez is a bad player. I'm just saying it's a bad thing because you don't want to rely on a single player. But it's
because you look at where
who does Mendes sneak into that club? That's what happens. That's the question.
You look at where Jimenez was. He was at Benfica. He wasn't getting any starting time.
Yeah.
Then he just went to Wolves and he got the starting time, and all of a sudden he's scoring pretty good goals. So, I mean, power to him.
Yeah, the thing with Jimenez that I would say could potentially be a problem is that you look at United, and in the league you have Rashford with 18 goals in the league, Martial with 18. Greenwood, I think, had 7 in the league. And then other players in that team occasionally chipped in with goals. You look at the Wolves team, pretty much every 1-0 win they got from about November-ish until the end of the season was a Jimenez 1-0 goal or a header from a set piece or, some sort of cross goal that either Traore or
Jota
Neves or Jota takes the corners. I don't know, but
you mean who took the corner?
Yeah, who took the corners? And it's Jimenez scored a lot of goals, yes, but he also had penalties and was pretty much the only goal scorer. So where does this Wolves team go from here? I just don't really know. Whereas you have Vardy finishing with 23 goals. Yes, he scored 3 in the Southampton game, and it's a freak game, whatever. He still scored 23 goals. He's in his 30s. Yes, he's going to be a year older, but he's still going to get you goals. He's like a rat. He just like squeezes through defenses and finds space that
you see where he's from.
He finds
from the wrong side of Yorkshire. That's all I gotta say. He's a Sheffield Wednesday fan.
He finds spaces that I can't see any other striker finding in the league. He scores goals that I don't see any other striker in the league scoring.
He's a Wednesday guy. He's a Sheffield Wednesday guy. Of course, he's a rat.
Well, I just think that Leicester team could really do with a foil to Vardy, a younger foil to Vardy that isn't Iheanacho or Perez, who just like to run with the ball. Like someone who's going to play off of Vardy and be smart around the box and not be wasteful around the box like Perez is. That is how I see Leicester doing better. I don't see Wolves fixing their team with one player. I don't see like one player fixing their problem. So this end of the season resulting in Leicester getting Europa League instead of Champions League is probably going to have a toll on their season next year if they decide to pursue the Europa League, as we've seen with Burnley, and it's going to be Leicester's first time in the Europa League. But I just think like Leicester have so many young players.
Yeah.
Wolves have 3. Wolves have 3 young players. Vinagre, Pedro Neto, and Dendoncker are like the only young players really in that team, under 23.
Well, I think Neves is under 23.
Ruben Neves is still pretty young, but I mean,
okay, well,
he's not okay. Like, but you don't want to shift your team around him because he's completely
exactly. Yeah, I don't know. The other teams above Wolves right now have young players that are going to get better. And they have a lot of young players that are going to get better. Chelsea, United, Leicester all have young players who are only going to get better. So I just think next year is going to be really interesting because we're going to see what this transfer window brings to those top teams. We've seen Chelsea sign players that only were going to go to them if they could secure Champions League.
Yeah.
And United now have Champions League and Leicester don't. So I guess we'll see what Leicester can scrounge up. But they don't have
because they want Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have the super agent connection. Leicester don't have the super agent connection that Wolves have. They're not just getting the hacking away at the newest crop of Portuguese talent. Leicester don't have that. So I guess we'll see.
All right, I think we have to move on here. We've been talking Premier League pretty much all episode. I want to talk a little something else here. We'll go to Serie A real quick. There's really nothing crazy to talk about. We'll just talk. I'll go through the results again. I'll try and do it as funny as I did for the Premier League. I don't know that much about this. So starting off, Brescia defeated Parma, or Parmesan cheese over here 2-1. Parma won 2-1. Never mind. Genoa beat. I'm doing really good so far.
You gotta actually read the results. Focus on the results, not your little snips.
Genoa lose to Inter 3-0. Napoli beat Sassuolo 2-0. Bologna win 3-2 against Lecce. Cagliari lose 1-0 to Udinese. I can never say that. Udinese. There you go. Lazio destroy Verona 5-1. Roma beat Fiorentina 2-1. Spal and Torino draw 1-1. And Juventus win the title against Sampdoria with a 2-0 win. Let's talk about the title here. So another title, this is the 9th year in a row that they won the Serie A title.
I mean, I really don't like talking about Juventus winning trophies. I really don't like talking about it at all. But what I will say is, as someone who sort of leans towards the Inter side of Italy, mostly, I like watching Inter most of the time, it seems to me as if Serie A this season was decided by one team being the most pragmatic and oftentimes being incredibly frustrating and not using the talent in their squad to the fullest, but being incredibly pragmatic and getting low-scoring wins against bad teams and winning close games against the best teams. That's what Juventus did. Then you look at the other teams in the league, you look at Atalanta, Inter, Lazio even, they dropped points in games where it is embarrassing to the fans of those clubs that they would be losing the games. If you look at the stats from some of these games that Lazio have lost, or Atalanta have lost, or the games that Inter drew since the restart, it is insane, the dominance. There's such a cutoff in quality. Once you leave like the top 7 in Italy, there's such a cutoff in quality. So these teams cannot give Juventus this much of a break. They can't keep giving Juventus fuel to their fire to be motivated to win titles. Juventus, yes, dropped points this year against some of the smaller teams, but they're not dropping points every other game against small teams. That's how they win titles. And they have Cristiano Ronaldo, who is an it factor player. He inspires the team. Yes, he scored so many penalties this year, but I always say this, you have to earn the penalties. United earned 14 penalties this season. They didn't even score all 14. Juventus earned, I think, 17 penalties this season and scored 16 of them. 17 penalties and scored 16.
Was the one Ronaldo missed recently was the only one that
exactly. He just recently missed his first penalty in a very long time. So, yes, he scored a lot of penalties, but Juventus were incredibly pragmatic. They found ways to win games. And yes, the 5-0s look good. The 5-1s look good. The 6-2s look good. And Inter, Atalanta, and Lazio can all applaud themselves and give a pat on the back for the games they won by 4 or 5 goals. But you didn't win the title. You didn't take advantage of Juventus's weakness, and Juventus is going to rebuild. So it's just, to me, my last statement is that this is probably the most frustrating Serie A season I've ever seen. Like, it was just awful.
Agreed. But it's also been the most competitive.
Definitely the most competitive.
I don't know, like, it's hard to say, like, oh, like, yeah, this was definitely, like, a team was definitely going to come out on top of Juventus. But I think, at points this season, Inter challenged, Atalanta challenged, Lazio challenged. But again, you're right. Juventus just stayed consistent enough to do what they needed to do. Having said that, this is probably their worst season. Like, it's probably worse than last season, like, in terms of the quality. I mean, I don't necessarily take expected points to be the end-all, be-all metric, because expected goals and expected assists are a little more reliable. But they've massively overperformed. For one, expected points has them about 69. They should be. They're at 83 points right now. But first of all, the top 4 has really wrapped itself up because of the way that those teams have challenged. You look, Inter, Atalanta, and Lazio are, they're pretty far ahead of, Roma, AC Milan.
And they're all in Champions League now.
Yeah.
Where they place. I think where they place pretty much decides where, like, which pot they're in or something like that. Depending on who they'll play.
So they've wrapped it up. So it's a question. There's 1 point between those 3 teams. So I guess over the last couple of games we're gonna see how it all shakes out. I'd like to see Atalanta hit 100 goals. That would be something else. They're on 96 right now. Over the course, if 2 games they can get 4 goals, I think they can. This is Atalanta.
They can score 4 goals in 1 game.
It's possible. But yeah, I agree. It's been a frustrating season in the end, because at the beginning we were kind of like, this is Antonio Conte's, triumphant return to Serie A. He could probably make something happen with Inter, maybe next season. And I hate to say that, but maybe next season. Atalanta, again, next season. Like, it's annoying to have to say, they'll come back, next season and be better. But we have to, because Juventus have just clawed their way to the title, as they did last season, as they did the season before. I guess that's really it. It's a bit shocking to me. But what can you do when you have a team with the resources of Juve?
Another year, another trophy for Ronaldo. It's starting to get ridiculous.
Indeed.
But we'll talk more about Serie A when it wraps up. If you look at it now, everything is pretty much wrapped up, top of the table wise. bottom of the table, I guess it mostly is
Spal are
wrapped
going
up.
down, and Brescia are going down.
Yeah, it's pretty. Everything's pretty much wrapped up, but we'll talk about it when it officially is over. But all we need to know now is Ronaldo won another title. Or Juventus won 9 years in a row. I don't know who's ever gonna. Could they go 10 years in a row? Like,
I think they will. Like I
that's
know
insane.
Inter is
That's going
strengthening
back.
well.
That's
Yeah.
going back to like early like La Liga days where Real Madrid won every year.
Yeah. Well, we'll just hope that Immobile finishes top scorer, and we'll have something to talk about other than
Yeah, exactly.
And his hat trick over the weekend certainly put him in pole position for that. What is he? It's 34 now on the season, level with Lewandowski for the European Golden Boot. That's something else. Now, I mean, I would say Lewandowski's had a more impressive season, but Immobile, I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from it, like except for the penalties. But I mean, interesting attacking talent there, honestly. But it's what can you say?
All right. Now we're gonna talk some. Hey, yeah, Seth, you're muted right now.
That he is.
Yeah, he is muted.
Well, he knows that.
Oh, he's talking to some.
I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
The Conte, I think, was brought in to end Juventus's dominance.
Definitely.
So if Inter don't finish second, I think I would say for this Inter season, it's a failure. Regardless of how far they go in the Europa League, it's a failure. You bring in Conte to win you a trophy. You bring in so many players. I think they brought in 9 players. And you expect him to revolutionize this team, and you still lose out on the title to a Juventus team that have many players in their 30s and basically one goal scorer. And you still lose out despite having one of the premier striking talents in the world in Lautaro Martinez, Romelu Lukaku, who has scored an incredible amount of goals after a very disappointing season for him. You bring in Christian Eriksen, and still Alexis Sanchez is overperforming him. You have problems. There's problems there that if they finish second, people might just wash over that as, oh, Inter finished second, but they have problems and they're going to need to address them in the summer. And Juventus aren't going to hesitate. I mean, I'm sure Juventus's board is concerned how close this season went, and they're going to start looking in the transfer market to change things. And this was a Juventus team that was pretty unlucky with injuries at certain points in the season. So, yeah, that's all I'll say.
All right, now we're going to move into the interesting stuff here. So, I don't know what it's been. I feel like everyone sleeps on the Portuguese League. But
it's because it's the 7th best league in Europe.
But I mean, if you look at it year after year, all this crazy stuff happens. Like you guys have heard me tell you guys these stories throughout this, like ever since we started talking, right, about this Portuguese league. This is pretty much what happens every year. Like always this crazy stuff. So at the restart, Benfica blew. They sucked really bad. They fired the coach, and then Porto went on to win. Congratulations to them. They deserve it, really do. But now Benfica, they went back to old reliable, and they got Jorge Jesus to come back. Now with Jorge Jesus coming back, he had to leave Flamengo after signing an extension for Flamengo, and that made them really upset. So now Porto and Flamengo fans are like best friends now because they all hate Benfica. What's a surprise? And now Jorge Jesus is back, and now all these big rumors are coming in that all these players are coming in. And one of those players is Edison Cavani, and he is rumored to be announced tomorrow, Wednesday, Wednesday the 29th. Does he do it? I think he does. But I'm going to wait until I see him wearing the jersey. And he would be a very big addition to Benfica. If I'm not mistaken, this would be the biggest player Benfica ever signed, and it would be on a free transfer, which is kind of crazy. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that. And he would be Jorge Jesus'
It's an ideal transfer.
That'd be great.
I think it's
a brilliant transfer. It's brilliant.
Yeah. The question is there anywhere else he could go? And my answer to that would be no.
To go to
My answer
Leeds.
is also no.
Because like the only other league I could see him popping up in is Serie A, and I think most of the teams, the top teams, aren't gonna take him on because they've kind of wrapped up their attacks and they've set it up. The only, it's not like he's gonna crop up at Milan. He doesn't want to repartner with Ibrahimovic. They're not gonna take that risk. It's not like he's gonna pop up at Roma. There's no Premier League club aside from Leeds who are really interested. And do I really think he's going to do well in a Bielsa side? No. Do I think he's going to want to sit in a Bielsa side that's not going to be in Europe? No. Benfica are the ideal option for him.
Yeah, there is also a plan that Benfica want to exercise investing in the team to not be embarrassed in Europe like they have been the past 4 years.
I think they might have to. For that, I think they might have to sell. I know that sounds.
Oh, they
weird.
are. They're definitely selling.
Yeah, but it's the when you want to kind of reestablish your dominance, it's important what you buy and when you buy. Sorry, who you buy. It sounds like I'm objectifying players. But it's more important who you sell and when you sell, because you look at Liverpool, right? Like. And when they sold, like you have to think like when you're going to rebuild, you have to be able to take the risk on selling assets and selling them at the right time. It's really difficult to do, but that's what you got to do. And I think you look at that Benfica squad, there are assets who could be sold. There are teams that are interested in a lot of their players. I don't know where Ruben Dias will be next season. But
they're saying a bunch of Serie A teams are looking at him.
So I mean, there's like it's can they get good fees for them? Can they promote the right players from the youth squad? And Benfica have always been pretty good at that. Like whatever you want to say, like they are they have a very good.
Definitely, I think they were just awarded like the best academy in the world.
Yeah. They are a reliable production line, shall we say? So and then the final component is who they can purchase on kind of like low-ish fees.
That's what they've been doing now. That's what they've been doing for years now.
Yeah, and Jesus has I mean with Flamengo, I mean he got them to the Club World Cup final, against Liverpool. Not that we really rate the Club World Cup very much, but like.
But that was big. That was much bigger to them, though.
Yeah, exactly.
He won the Copa Libertadores. That's what.
Yeah,
that's what
which
really
was massive for them, and he got. I mean, Gabigol firing. Now, I mean, his spot in Portugal was not very good. But I think the fact of the matter is, I think Jesus is there's undeniable quality of management there. I think he's going to turn Benfica around, at least
like he did the first time too.
At least as far as Portugal is concerned, he will turn them around. What will he do in Europe? It's incredibly difficult to say because a lot of the teams around Europe are restructuring, and as we saw, like with the round of 16, this was the first in the Champions League. This was like the first season in years that it was purely Europe's top 5 leagues in the round of 16. So how does a team from outside that, like a Benfica, like an Ajax, like a Porto, like how do they make that? How do they get out of the group stage? So we'll see. I think it's actually I'm actually with you. It's incredibly exciting. Cavani is gonna score.
Yeah, and I'll tell more about what the next season's looking like in Portugal.
Yeah,
so, first I'll cap off the big matchups that happened this last weekend. So there was a battle for the final Europa League qualification spot between Rio Ave and Famalicão. And Famalicão could have qualified for it last week, but they lost, or they dropped points, and so it came down to the last match week. And they needed to beat Marítimo. That's all they needed to do. It didn't matter what Rio Ave did; they needed to win. So against Marítimo, well, first off, I'll say that Rio Ave won decent. They won pretty easily against Boa Vista. And then you go down at the same time. You have Maritimo and Famalicão. So I'll go through the whole match right here. So 1-0 in the second minute to Maritimo.
Yep.
45th minute, 1-1. 48th minute, 2-1 Maritimo. 87th minute, 2-2 2-2. 90th minute, 3-2 Famalicão. 95th minute, 3-3. So they lost it in the last minute.
And that would have been massive.
Famalicão dominated that game, like low-key. Like 65% possession, 16 shots.
They just didn't have it in them. They just didn't have it. I mean, but I saw videos after the fact. The fan reception was so beautiful. They got home to Fama, and the fan, like a decent amount of fans out in the street, cheering on the team as the bus comes in, throwing the flares all over the place. It was beautiful to see. And same thing with the Hiawav fans. The Hiawav fans did celebrate with the team also. Didn't really social distance very well, but that's besides the fact.
That's been the problem ever since the restart in Portugal.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how there's been no confirmed cases within any teams. It's unbelievable.
They done screwed that one up.
Well, I would have loved to see Famalicão finish in the Europa League spot because they were such an interesting story at the beginning of the season. But I mean, I think the restart, like how far the restart pushed, season paused in early March and then didn't come back until June, or May. I think that really hurt them because I'm sure they would have liked to have wrapped it up in a normal fashion, and then falling on the last day, that sucks. But it is pretty interesting to see where that squad goes from here, because I know they have a lot of players on loan. They'll probably see if they can keep those players for next season on probably more loans, because I don't know how the money's looking in the Portuguese league, but I'm sure finishing 7th or 6th doesn't get you very much.
Not very good.
Yeah, I think
getting first place doesn't give you enough to just think about that.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the Portuguese league right now is, as it always seems to be, it's the top teams giving their players on loan to the lower teams. But
absolutely,
with Famalicão, they've gotten players from
all over the place.
Europe's top 5 leagues. They have players from Wolves, Atletico Madrid, and a couple other pretty big name clubs. So that's something interesting that I hope happens more. I hope more teams pull a Marcus Edwards situation and send their players to Portugal, because I think that would really improve the quality of the league. No, I love Marcus. I mean, I'll just say it. He got a lot of goal contributions this year. He got a lot of goal contributions in a Liga NOS season that didn't have very many good attackers. He got a lot of goal contributions, and he was very good. But I'd like to see English players going to Liga NOS, or Spanish players going to Liga NOS, because we've seen Benfica, specifically Benfica, has taken players around the ages of 19 to 23 and turned them into players who are ready to play in the top 5 leagues. They've transformed players over the course of a couple seasons into players that big teams in the top 5 leagues are looking at. Alex Grimaldo right now, Ruben Dias, these players were nobodies basically when they came to Benfica or started playing.
Even if you go back a little,
they're sellable assets now.
You go farther back, Jonas was a big one. He came in from nowhere. All of a sudden, he's scoring 30 goals nonstop at 40 years old. I was like, all right.
And then even players they've sold in the past, David Luiz, Angel Di Maria.
They bought
that are nobodies.
Chelsea just to give them back.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like the Liga NOS right now is at a point where it could become very exciting in Europe. I haven't even gotten to why it's going to be so exciting. But I still got to tell a story here, right? So there was a battle for 3rd place against Braga and Sporting. Sporting had a horrendous year. Oh my goodness, it's been bad. But they finally got a good coach, thank God. But it was bad. So it came down to the last match week again. If Sporting lose and Braga win, Braga get 3rd place. And that's exactly what happened. Braga beat Porto. And Benfica beats Sporting. So I think this is the 3rd time or 4th time Braga's finished 3rd place.
I'm looking at Braga now, and a couple years ago, the president of the club, he's a wackadoo, but he sometimes knows what he's talking about. He said that they were going to be prepared to try and win the league by the year 2022. This is a big step.
This is a big step.
They're going to be in Europa League. They had a good Europa League last year. They got
They've
knocked out.
been good in the Europa League a couple times.
Yeah, they've made it to the
Multiple,
final
yeah.
once. They're good. They just need to capitalize, and I think this is finally the time. They got a good coach. They stole Rio Ave's coach.
And they've got money coming in.
Yeah, that's right, because it's
The sale of Trincao, I think that can't be underestimated in terms of the significance. It's going to reshape the squad.
Definitely.
First of all, 8 goals, 6 assists. That's a pretty good return. I was kind of critical of it a few weeks back, but that was
it's no Marcus Edwards,
from the
but
other
it's pretty
side
good.
of the coin. But they're getting close to 30 million for him. They can really turn that into something.
15 will be used for like spending probably.
Yeah, and they can use that, especially.
Oh, they'll use that.
It's hard to actually judge this, because some of the transfers that we've already seen so far since the pandemic have suggested that there hasn't been a market recorrection, but I think there will be among the smaller sides. So I think 15 million could actually get you something like decently far, and like multiple players this summer. So they got future Braga, I would say.
All right, so I will talk about the relegation battle, but I want to explain this first, right? So if you look at just the coaches, right? Port have Sergio Conceição, and he's been there for years now, and he's the guy there. He's an entertaining coach. He talks a lot and stuff like that.
Your least favorite person on the planet.
Benfica just got another guy. Benfica just got Jorge Jesus back, who talks a lot, and he's a fantastic manager. And it looks like Edison Cavani is going to be coming in. Sporting, they finally got their manager in the future with Ruben Amorim, and they got a young team coming back. I think they'll be better next year, hopefully. You have Braga, who picked up a coach who brought Rio Ave to 5th place, which is kind of crazy to think about. Like, Rio Ave's been good, but they're like never like that good. So I mean, you could see Braga pushing harder than they did than this year, because you look at Braga this year, they had like 3 coaches and they still finished 3rd place. It's kind of crazy. So you have those. And then you have Famalicão that's not going to go anywhere. They're going to be bolster the team. They're going to do whatever they can to just stay up.
They'll drop off.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. And then, I don't even know. I can't even think about this no more. Like, just those 4 teams, right? But I'll talk about the relegation battle that happened on the last match week. So we had 3 teams that could have possibly went down, with Tondela, Portimonense, and Vitória Setúbal. It ended up being Portimonense after Portimonense had a fantastic return to restart. It came down to Tondela scoring in the 90th minute for them to get sent down. And a penalty. That's just heartbreaking.
Rough.
They just couldn't turn the draws to wins. A lot of they have some of the actually, I mean, you look at some of the teams above them, Tondela had 16 losses, Portimonense had 15.
No,
I mean,
Tondela do this every year. They somehow they always, like, if you go back a couple years, you look at all these standings, Tondela is always in that last spot that doesn't get relegated. They are the masters of an escape. Like, I remember a few years back, it came down to 2 teams, and they both played off in the last match week, and they won. They won. They dominated. I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is crazy how much they actually do this. I just wanted to say that. Just Tondela. If there's any Tondela fans listening, which I know there isn't, screw off. Just screw off.
Hey, if they found the secret, they found a secret. I mean, I don't think any team can escape relegation more than 4 or 5 seasons. At some point, you either have to move up the table or go down. So don't worry.
All right.
They're going down.
The last story from Portugal I want to talk about is Aves. I've been telling you guys about Aves, but I want to tell everybody here. So Avj, let's go back. Let's go back to when Avj were in the third division. They flew up to the first division. I mean, like, went to third division. They spent the second division for like 2 years, and then they got promoted to the first league. And their first game in the first league was against Sporting. They lost that game. And they somehow, I don't know how they did it, but they somehow stayed in the league, and they somehow got to the Portuguese Cup final against Sporting. So it's coming around full circle right now, right? It's even more amazing that they beat Sporting in the Taça Portugal final.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the champions of Portugal. Just not the league. They're just champions of Portugal in general. They get granted their spot to Europa League and all that, right? Fantastic for them, right? Guess what? They don't pass in their paperwork, so they can't go to Europa League. Spot goes down to the next person. And this is the beginning of the end.
Never happens. Like, honestly, it's embarrassing.
Yeah. This is the beginning of the end for Avj. You thought management was bad when they didn't pass in their paperwork? It's even worse now. They finished dead last this season. They had to cut about 50% of their squad because they can't pay for them. They had to repo the team bus because they had to pay off debts. They lost the trophy that they won. Lost my ass. They melted it down so they can get money to pay off some stuff.
No, it just vanished.
And let's bring something else up. They were going to forfeit the last 2 matches, but I think they had a second league division team help them out, give them a bus and stuff like that, right? Whatever. But they couldn't even warm up before the game because of insurance issues, because they couldn't afford the insurance. If you guys want to learn rock bottom,
there
it is. There it is.
That's rock bottom.
Now they're in the second league. They have no money to start. They're going to take a financial hit. They're probably not going to have any money. I wouldn't be surprised if this team folds.
With the pandemic losses, yeah. I think
which sucks.
If you're scraping money like that, you either have to sell the club off, or you gotta go into administration. I think they're just gonna go into administration, which is sad to see. I mean, you don't want to see a club fall apart like that, but when you mismanage things so poorly,
they actually have a lot of great fans for a small team.
Yeah,
it's like,
but when you mismanage that poorly, like that's what ends up happening.
But rest in peace, Aj. We hope to see you soon. But on to more happier news here.
Goes to Watford.
Yeah, I know, right? There you go. But in happier news for Portugal, right? They just announced some new rules for next year. They're going to try and do what the Bundesliga does, and they're going to have a promotion/relegation playoff. So, the bottom 2 teams will go down in the league, and the third last team is going to have to do a promotion or the relegation playoff with the team that finished third place in the second league. I think that's pretty big, fun stuff. I'll be able to watch that, hopefully.
It changes that last segment of the season, that last third where teams are scrapping, because it's gonna be a lot different. It's kind of a bigger safety net, but it'll be interesting to see how it forces teams to reshape the way they operate. It's hard to say because it has meant that a lot of large teams have kind of saved themselves, like Werder Bremen in the Bundesliga. So we'll see how it works.
Tondela can actually do it much better now. They can beat a second league team.
Or it might actually screw them. We'll see.
We'll see. Honestly, I don't know how it's going to be. But just last point here, Saturday is the big cup match against Benfica and Porto. This is a make or break for me. You guys will know. You guys don't even need to win the match.
It's going to determine Rob's mood for the rest of the year, everybody.
You guys don't need to watch the match. If I'm not on the next episode, you'll know what happened. You'll know what happened if I'm not on. That's all. But yeah, I think it should be a fun match. Benfica have turned somewhat of a table around here. They have played better. with Ruben Verissimo. Yeah, what a name. Great first name, everyone's saying, but we're living life there. But I think that's all we got for this episode, eh, boys?
Except that Kepa's up for 50 million if anyone wants him.
There you go.
50 million for Kepa. It's a
Nope.
pretty good deal.
Best video of the last week for me was seeing in the Liverpool-Chelsea game, the free kick comes in at the edge of the box. It's the chance that Van Dijk almost scored. And if you listen, and this video is now all over the internet, all of the Chelsea players are screaming, Kepa, Kepa, Kepa. And when Van Dijk when he misses the chance, all of the Chelsea defenders turn back to him and say, Kepa. It's absolutely shocking. So, no, I don't think any call will be taking a punt on him. Terrible.
Hopefully not. Let's hope he just stays at Chelsea.
Never inspired that little confidence in their back four. Jeez Louise. Or back five sometimes. Shocking. But that's all we got, I guess.
That's all we got, yeah. It's been an eventful episode. I've made fun of every Premier League team, it looks like.
That's good.
We made fun of every Premier League team. We had some sad stories. We had some happy stories. Mostly sad stories, especially in Portugal, because it's a relentless league, and you guys should start watching it more often. But we never know. It's impossible to watch the league, first of all, because Portugal has no idea how to market anything. But different story for a different day. Is that all we got?
Cup final weekend. It'll be exciting. Multiple cup finals.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Again, if you guys don't watch the match, you guys will know the result if I'm on next week or not. So happy luck. All right. So I want to thank you guys for watching the SLN Soccer Report. I've been Rob. That's Seth. That's Nick. Subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to our Apple Podcast feed that just got created if you want to listen to us on the car or when you're working out or something like that. But until next time, see you later.